Alrighty. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Paint the Ceiling Pink, a webinar based on women in design. I'm Nikki, and I'm the Digital Marketing Director for Snow Bee Designs. I'm also their project manager. Looks like we're going to be spending about an hour and a half together this evening. And during this time, we can't see you and we can't hear you, but we'd still like you to participate. So if you feel like it, go ahead and use that little Q&A button right down there at the bottom of your screen to submit a question to our moderator. Looks like we have a full house, so we'll do our best to get as many of those questions in as we can. All right, I don't know about you guys, but I am really excited for this evening to see how design connects us all. And now, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Snow Blackwood, founder and creative director of Snow Bee Designs.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Nikki, for that super professional and wonderful introduction. I am so excited to be hosting this design panel, and we've got 4 amazing women here today. But before we start the discussion, let's just get to know each of them a little bit better. I originally met creative director Kat Topaz as her student, taking her design strategy and typography classes at PNCA. And I saw firsthand Kat's ability to inspire others and her infectious creative energy. Her portfolio is unparalleled. She's an expert at publication design, having redesigned scores of news weeklies, including our very own Willamette Week and Mix Magazine, and shown here the San Francisco Bay Guardian. And Kat, super sorry I didn't get the high-res image changed out in time, but you can see her work, and the Boston Weekly Dig. What I love about Kat is she is completely fearless and bold with her design, as you can see by the photo. And when the world went digital, Kat smartly pivoted to designing the app, what she calls and realized was the digital magazine, with her company StoryCode and Jason Parath. Their agency created the very first mobile apps, including Nike's first app, one for the NBA, Sotheby's, Ergo Bay, Greater Portland, Oregon Wine Board, and there are many more, and you can see those on Behance if you search under StoryCode. And what is Kat doing now? Well, she is running a farm. Many of you have likely heard of Kroger's farm on Sobeys Island. Well, it is now Topaz Farm. Leave it to Kat to completely reinvent her career once again. Our panelist, Jennifer Wright, is an architect, a writer, and a community builder. Jennifer is passionate about supporting women and underrepresented groups within the profession of architecture. She's served as chair of the AIA Portland Committee on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and is a proud recipient of the Van Evera Bailey Fellowship, a grant which she used to research gender inequity and develop an organization called Designers Build PDX. With more than 20 years of experience, she's worked on many different scales of projects ranging from residential to multi-story commercial, and currently works at Telford Brown Studio Architecture, which if you haven't met Richard Brown, who runs that, he is a great guy. Jennifer's skill in architecture is apparent in her work. Shown here is a conceptual drawing for a new home in Moiser. And here, how cool, the actual thing. And I know Jennifer and her firm would want me to mention that this project is still under construction. It's not fully complete. And this is a beautiful illustration by artist Craig Holmes, and a proposed project, a proposed house for a client in Lake Oswego, on Oswego Lake. And this is an ADU, which Jennifer designed in the West Hills. An interior designer, Cami Gray. Cami has worked as a stylist for companies such as Pendleton, Nike, Leica, and Rejuvenation, and has spent the last 16 years developing her interior design company, which, by the way, is thriving during this time when we're all stuck at home and fixating on all the problems that we want to fix in our spaces. So I'm really glad that's working for Cami. And here is some of her beautiful work for Rejuvenation, and a kitchen she designed, which was featured in Country Living magazine. And speaking of kitchens, this is an HGTV project she designed with her daughter, Stephanie Mulak. Here is Stephanie and Cami together and their amazing hair. And one of the reasons I can relate to Cami is she was a single mom for most of her career. And she admits that she didn't really get going with her career until later. She really hit her stride when her kids left the nest, and now she's hitting a design pace that I would love to match one day. And our moderator, Sarah Rothenfluch. Sarah is an award-winning media producer whose work on programs such as OPB's Think Out Loud and State of Wonder and popular Canadian program Sunday Mornings speaks for itself. I want to say thank you to our sponsors, Vita Co-working and Miller Paint. Paint the Ceiling Pink was named that because we were and still are eventually going to paint the actual ceiling pink at Vita with Miller Paint. But until then, I'm so glad that we're able to bring this portion of our event to you virtually. And without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Sarah Rothenfluch.
Thank you so much, Snow. Thank you for bringing us together today. My career is not as a designer, so I am the odd one out here. But what I think is so interesting is that we're going to be able to spend this happy hour together talking about things that really unite us. It's the business of design, but it's also what is it like to work as a woman? What is it like to work as a mother? What is it like to work in something which is more of your calling, perhaps, than just a profession? So there's so much story for all of these wonderful women, but I think I'll just start by asking if there was a particular moment where you thought, I want a career in this business. I want to be a designer. Kat, for you?
You know what I'm going to say. Oh man, I was going to be a ballet dancer. That's what I thought growing up. And so after years of classes and thinking that's what my calling was, I was really chicken to invest time into design. I knew that's what I enjoyed, but I was afraid after all those years of ballet. And so I was in New York City. I was visiting friends. A bunch were going to art school down the street. I saw what they were doing. It looked so much fun. So I thought, I'll just take one class. I'll just take one class and see. And I think I was probably hooked in the first 5 minutes. The second there was no looking back. And it's interesting because I know we'll get to this later, but about giving advice for folks thinking about design, I had no idea when I started all the possibilities. I had no idea. It only got better as I went on.
Was there a particular project that hooked you at the beginning when you were
You know, honestly, for me, I think it was more the process. It was the brainstorming. It was the working with others, working by yourself, staying up all night. It was the process more than the final project.
Jennifer, what about you? That magic moment, that aha moment?
I think I was always creative as a kid, but when I went to college, I was going into art history and advertising, and not initially architecture. And it was only after I graduated and I got an internship at the University of Minnesota Art Museum. I'm from Minnesota, so I went back to live with my parents, got an internship to see what the next phase of my life was going to be. And part of the role was to actually help move them into their new space, which was designed by Frank Gehry. And just the feeling of being in that space and that building, just the environment and the experience, that has always been something that's really been a visceral thing to me. And it it made me consider moving from art into actually architecture. So yeah, but I agree, Kat. It's a circuitous path, I think.
I think we'll learn that all of you have very cool paths to get to where you are. Cami, what about you? That magic moment that brought you into this design business?
I don't think I have a magic moment. You know, when I was very, very young, I mean, like just a kid in my room, I would constantly be moving furniture around, redecorating, creating a little apartment in my little 100 square foot room, creating Barbie apartments for them. So it was definitely just who I was from like literally as early as I can remember. But I didn't really think about it in terms of career. I just was creating something. I just loved to create. I mean, I could be making like little pinch pots. I could be making a pie. I could be, you know, I just love to make stuff. And and my mom is an architect, and my dad is a very, he's a business guy. Like he cares about money. He cares about making money. He would always say his company motto is sell, sell, sell. And I worked with him for a long time. He's, I think he's as much of an inspiration to me as my mom is. So I actually really like creating a business. I like having a design firm. I love the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, the spreadsheets, just, you know, all that stuff that gives me a lot of variety in what I do. But I would have to say, I don't really plan very well. I plan very poorly, actually. And I kind of wait until there's sort of an impetus to be like, oh, I should start an interior design business. And there is an impetus for that. So that's my daughter. And she just basically guides me. She's done it she's 30. So she's done it since the minute she started speaking, which is about 18 months old. And she's just like, here's what I need you to be. And I think it's self-interested. Also, she actually works with me. She's my partner in interior design. But I mean, she had to get me to be an interior designer because she doesn't give a shit about the business side of it. She does and she doesn't. Like she's really, really like is very good in business, but she's got a different motivation than I do, and it's very complimentary. But she's my muse. She guides me. So there wasn't any one moment for me. I was just asked to do this literally by my muse, and it made so much sense because that's who I actually am. So. I've just got someone who's paying very close attention to me, so it's pretty great.
She sounds like a pretty great daughter, that's for sure.
She's amazing.
So do you think, you guys were mentioning earlier that being a designer of whatever sort is perhaps more of a way of living and a way of looking at the world, more so than a particular occupation that you choose?
Sure.
Am I right? Does that
so it's interesting because when I started pre-desktop, when we were still doing everything without a computer, it was really common to study with people that had to do an apprenticeship for 6 years, literally just carrying type, right? Or writing up the typesetting that needed to be done before you could design even one page. And so it was really more of a vocation, right? In many senses, in many sense. But you could do that, and you could carry type around, and you could do all those things. But at the end of the day, if you didn't have that, whatever that was, that spark that could bring great design, you can't do this job. And it's one of the things, you know, when I teach at PNCA that is tricky, because you look at these students and you could have someone that puts in all the time in the world, but they either have it or they don't. And, you know, it's a really interesting, I think it's really interesting that you get to put your feet in both the artistic side and the discipline side. Does that make sense?
Totally does. Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer, what do you think? Is it more of a personality and a personal drive and way of thinking?
Yeah, I think it's, I guess, a lens on how you see things and I always think of creativity as finding solutions within constraints, either visible constraints or parenthetical, like what is the capacity to even do? But To your point, I think depending on your personality and especially your experience, that lends a lot to what you're bringing to that field, whatever field it is that you choose from. So I definitely see it as more of a calling, because it's a process that you can use in many different fields. So,
Tammy, it strikes me that what you've said about growing up and having sort of design in your blood from early on, something that all of you have a certain amount of. But something specific that you just mentioned is the balancing between that and the business side, right?
Yeah.
And if this is sort of part of all of your DNA, and you see people like students, for example, who really have that drive and have that creativity, how do you effectively balance those two things so that you can be creative, but then you can actually put a roof over your head?
Well, I think that the other side of your brain, the more logical, linear side that has to do the bookkeeping and the operations side, it feels like a great sense of relief to me to have time in my day to go to that side, because I don't have to be creative. I mean, not that there's not creativity in that, but I don't have to like come up with a really perfect idea that a client's going to be like, oh my God, that's perfect. I wouldn't have thought of that. Holy crap, you're good at your job. I just have to make sure that the spreadsheet, balances out, or the bank account does. So it's like, sometimes I feel like it gives me that like perfect ending, that closure that design kind of never can do, in a good way. But it's always sort of open-ended. There's always more possibilities. There's always another concept that you could have presented, and you'll think about that. But you don't think about that when you're in your, your business brain or managing your warehouse or things like that. So I feel like there's a little, it's like a break, for my brain. And I think it really, truly allows me to be creative when I need to be. And I also think that there's also the people part of it. I truly wouldn't be able to design without clients. I can't, if you gave me a project, I'm not an artist. I can't just create something for no reason. I literally can't. So I need to be like, who am I talking to? Who am I doing this for? I really need the people. And I think that's because I really like people. I like helping people. Like, I'm definitely the first person that many people come to, because I will drop everything and just do something ridiculous to help them. I mean, it's the mom and me too, but the people are the reason that I design. Without them, I don't know what I would do. Spreadsheets, I guess.
There's so many things I want to follow up on there. Like, do projects ever actually end? I think that's fascinating. But I do want to know from you guys, what do you think, Jen and Kat, about that idea of marrying sort of the business and the passion? Are there tricks there? Are there things?
Well, I actually think that if you only had the design,
yeah,
it's like being a fine artist. You need the business. In my mind, you need the business side to really be a good designer or to be a good creative, because to really be a good creative, it's problem solving. It's not just window dressing. And so sometimes design gets confused as just being something that looks nice. But I think really powerful design is achieving whatever that goal is. And when you're starting out, I remember when I started my first business, I was terrified, because I felt like, unlike Cammie, I didn't feel good at spreadsheets. I didn't feel good at being a salesperson. I didn't feel like I could do the business side. I knew, I could do the design side. And so my very first business plan, I literally wrote into it. My plan was to be good enough that people came to me, because I was terrified at how do you go and get them. And I think that probably happens to a lot of designers when they're starting out, right? Is they have the areas that they have a lot of confidence in, and then the areas that they don't. But if you're truly going to be valuable to your clients, right, those are the areas. I was thinking about this a lot today, actually. I was thinking about, as a creative, you can be creative with lots of things. But when you have that challenge, that this client comes to you with this challenge, like, there's lots of solutions, right? They could go to 20 designers and get 20 different great solutions. But how do you determine that your solution is effective? And so one of the things that I realized is if you could quantify what success is, people are going to come to you no matter what, because if you're going to make them money, if you're going to make them successful, then they're going to come to you, they're going to listen to you. And so that was one of the reasons why publication design, for example, was such a good fit for me. I liked the fact that here's this thing that already exists, and how can I make it better? Okay, so I wasn't starting with a blank canvas. And it never really ends, because the publication is going to come out again next week or next month, right? So it continues. So each time you can keep making it better. But the part that I found was so powerful is if I designed this publication and they could say, wow, from the time that you redesigned it or did your thing to it, we now have 10%, 20% more readers, or 10% more advertisers, then right there I can say, oh, proof, it worked, So you want me to keep helping? I've already proven now. And so then it's not just about, oh, I like that color blue, or I like that font you used. Now that we're being, the designer's being viewed as, I'm going to come in and I'm going to help your product be more successful, not I'm going to come in and make your product look good.
Right. It's marrying those two. Jen, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful statement about having something that's quantifiable, because, I mean, to your point, design is very open-ended. It's very, it's based on one person, right? Or one perspective, or it's just very hard to see what the value is in terms of a return of investment. So having something really tangible, like a spreadsheet or these metrics of analysis, are so helpful, because those challenges, I think, just having that kind of open-ended sphere is really, it's hard.
And I feel like for all of you, it seems like what Cami said about a project sort of never ends. I can just imagine you feeling that way and sort of looking at a magazine and thinking, oh, what else could it do? Or looking at your home and thinking about what other projects could make a place even more beautiful. I want to recognize the fact that we have a number of people having this happy hour with us right now who we can't see. We do have the Q&A available. So if people have questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A little box thing, and we'll get to them as we can throughout this time. But so that's there. Please use it if you would like. Meanwhile, let's get back to kind of moments in your career. There's so many things that the three of you have done. Could you let me know if there was one project that you're particularly proud of, that you thought, wow, I really created something unique or important to me with this one thing? I know it might be hard to pick because you've done a lot, but would one of you like to tell me about one of your projects? So I'll jump on first. All right, Cami, you're laughing. You get to go first.
It was funny because all we do are projects, and we're like, no, we don't want to talk about them. I mean, I feel like they all give me something. But there was a kitchen I did once, and it was actually the one that I think was shown in the beginning, that was in Country Living magazine. And that was such an outlier project for me. Number one, I was actually dating the guy that and living with him. So that was technically my kitchen at the time. And we were doing this very strange thing where we were doing all reclaimed materials. We had like $12,000 of a budget to do this whole kitchen. And so it was a lot of, just getting things for so cheap. I bought windows that I could use as drawer fronts. But it really got me out of that feeling as a designer that I have a niche already. This is like who I am, and it just brought me right out of that, because it was different than anything I've ever done before then, and I actually haven't done anything like that since. So it really sticks in my mind as, how did I tap into the person that could do that project? And it makes me realize that I have that ability, and I have that in me to do that, and it will come up from time to time. And I just have to trust that when the time comes, it's here, it's within me. And I just think that's a really cool thing. And I think that comes with experience. It comes with age. I think age is a big part of it, quite honestly. But you learn that you can do some really cool, different shit, and you always could, but you need to have the confidence in your ability and that it will come back around. Because that's, you know, sometimes we do something really cool and really different and we win an award or it gets on a magazine. We think like, God, what if that was the best thing I ever did? What if that's the most accolades I'll ever get for anything? But it's not true. It was in you and it's still there. You know, it just has to, you know, materialize again. So that's what I liked about that project. It wasn't necessarily anything about, you know, that I want to continue to do very rustic kitchens with black walls and bring in farm sinks that, you know, I had to spend 3 million hours restoring. It's that I just had it in me to do that. And I have that in me to do it again in some other way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Like
but
you say, age is a part of it. Is that the sort of age as in, I'm at the age now where I don't really care what the result is. I'm willing to take the risk. Is that what you mean by that, or?
Yes. In fact, you know, when we had we had like a dry run at this audience, and it was awesome. Just really fun to see just the play between all of us. But it really got me thinking, you know, because we're all women, so of course there are no men here. And it got me thinking about, you know, where do men, you know, fall into this picture with all of us? You know, like I work with a lot of builders because I'm on a design build thing. I do a lot of remodels, kitchens and baths and whatnot. So I work with a lot of dudes. And I was trying to think like, am I being disrespected? You know, is there sexism? And probably, but I really don't give a shit. I just do my job and make sure that I'm totally there for the client and that I'm communicating with them and the collaborations between the two of us. And there aren't very many men that I would say that I think are making it super unpleasant for me, but I honestly don't care. You know, it's like, I care about my clients. I care about the design. I care about bringing my best work. You know, I care about, you know, that we're all collaborating and, you know, just communicating, we're transparent, all that. I just don't really have but I think that comes with age.
Yeah.
I think that maybe at 30, I would have cared about that. Maybe at 40, I would have cared about that. At 53, I don't really care. I care about what my kids think of me. I care about, you know, I have the things I care about that can really take me down, but it's not going to be any builder that, you know, thinks designers are all airheads, because we're not.
There's a lot for us to tap into there, and especially what it's like to be a woman in this field. We have a lot to talk about. I want to make sure to get to some of your cool projects though. Jen, can you name one for me? Something that you'd like to highlight as something you're proud of?
Yeah, I think that ADU project that was pictured at the beginning is one of the projects that I really hold up as kind of a pivotal moment. You know, previously to that, I did a lot more commercial work, and I had wanted to pivot into doing more work where there were just fewer people at the table, right? Where you could really get to know homeowners better and be part of the project from the beginning to the end. And especially with ADU projects, it feels like you're opening up all these possibilities, right? I mean, there's that potential of being able to house people from your family, or have a second income, or just really make changes towards helping with our density crisis. Like, you're personally have some way to move forward and take agency. So it just really felt like, you know, not only were you doing a project for a person and really being able to meet their goals, but there was kind of this larger goal. So as you know, Cami was saying, it's like if you just focus on like each project and get fulfillment out of just like the built work, it's almost not enough. It's like you're needing to see kind of the broader picture.
Absolutely. Kat, a project that you'd like to share?
I can't pick one.
No,
I could list like 100, but I will tell you a snippet that I just thought of. 1986, walking down the street on the way to like my class, and I saw an ad I designed that was placed in the New York Times, and the paper was on the street rolling down. It was in the gutter. And I was like, that's my design. My design made it to be garbage. And I just remember this like glorious feeling that like I was out there and somebody saw my work. There are so many projects that have been amazing that I can't narrow it to one, but I think it all comes to like each time it was achieving something maybe for the first time, you know, the first time, oh, there's just so many. And I think one of the things that I've been really fortunate about by working often for myself, or which of course means having the ability to choose which clients you work with or which projects you work on, or the fact that I worked with people and worked for people that I really respected and we had a really good relationship, is that I, for the majority of my projects, are things that really excited me, you know? And so, you know, that's why I don't know where to start. There are certain, yeah.
Why don't I pick one for you?
Okay.
Tell us about, you had like a long storied career in print and in design for print. And then someone came along, a friend, I believe, who said, work on this app with me or try creating this
app.
Sure.
Okay.
And then you said, I don't want to. And then he convinced you. Tell us about that one and how you made that.
Sure. So this is probably my 14th year having Topaz Design, which was an agency in Portland. And we started as just publications, but the fun in evolving and trying new things is we became more of an agency that did a little of everything. So we had web and marketing and branding, but my heart was still a publication designer. So this person who I didn't know actually came to me because someone said, if you're going to work on publications, you need to talk to Kat. And he approached me and he told me this big idea that he had about starting a company to do digital magazines. And I said, that's nice, but no, I'm very happy. But I will work on one project with you. And we did one app, we did one digital publication, and literally before the project was over, it was like, okay, I'm gonna sell Topaz Design, we are gonna do this. And that was the beginning of Story Code. And the reason that was such a pivotal moment for me is because here we were gonna design publications, which is something that I had now worked on for 30 years. So I really felt like I had a lot of confidence in how people read and how to pull someone around the page. But we were gonna do this in an area that was brand new. So I know this is probably hard for, I don't know who's watching, so I don't know how hard it is to imagine, but when we did this, there hadn't been a single app. In fact, we used to joke, because we at first designed on iPads, we used to joke, people are never gonna read on their phone. Like nobody's ever gonna read like any long form journalism on their phone, right? But back when we tackled this, you have to keep in mind, first of all, there wasn't all the software that exists now. So a lot of stuff had to be custom dev, which again, like anybody that's worked on an app realizes there's so many, like you have to work with a team of folks. You have to have somebody that's really strong or a team of folks that are really strong in coding. You have all these elements. So it became this super exciting adventure because you couldn't do it by yourself. You had to work as a team. You had to figure out how to get it. And we did one of our first apps was for the Stratford Shakespeare Festival. And they basically sent us like a 300-page book and all of these beautiful photos and videos. And so we had to figure out how can we let people, you know, see the visual story, but also read the 300 pages. And so now, again, go back to like 2011, when we were doing this, we decided that we would have all the video and photos in the portrait, in the landscape view. And when you went to read the story, you would just turn your iPad and you would read it in, I can't remember what it's called anymore. In portrait view. Okay. Well, this doesn't seem like a big deal now, but back then it had never been done. It was the same view, regardless on how held the device, right? So like these little things were so terribly exciting because we figured out what we wanted the experience to be or what we thought a user would like. We had to create something that we called it digital natives and digital immigrants, right? So someone like me or someone like my father was clearly the digital immigrant. So we had to make it so obvious that I could pick it up without feeling dumb and figure out how to navigate. But I also needed someone who was in their 20s to pick it up and not be like, oh my gosh, this was made for my grandpa, right? So all of those challenges, I think is for me, what got me really, really excited. Because it was kind of like monster Sudoku, right? You had all of these things that you were balancing. So I guess that was a really fun project.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. And now you have the fun project of starting a farm. I think that sounds like you're going to be learning some new things too.
We are learning so much. Yeah, it is. It is every day. In fact, that's probably why it's been so much fun, because we have no background in farming. I am shocked how much everything I've done as a creative or as a business owner is basically being applied. It's about creating a team. It's about leaning on experts, just like, when we created the app. It's about asking a lot of questions. And I think that's probably the biggest difference for me now than if you go back to when I was a designer starting out. Because I think when I started, I was looking in a very, very narrow, like which font to use, right? I won't start a project to this day without figuring out which font to use. It's super important. But I also now look at a much, much bigger picture. And it's funny to me. I never changed my LinkedIn profile from saying creative when we bought the farm, because I think it goes back to the DNA. It's really how you approach something.
And it sounds like collaboration has been very important to you. Cami and Jen, where does collaboration fit into the work that you do?
Yeah. Well, I think Snow kind of hinted at this at the beginning about the fact that all of us are creative, right? Everybody has that ability within them. And I love the idea of like the best idea wins. It's not necessarily who's coming to the table with what background. It's just, does it make sense? Does it work? Yeah, so much of what we do, I think, is a collaborative process, and we're guiding it, right? We're using our perspective and our expertise to create a framework around somebody's life. Like in the case of what I do, which is mostly residential design, it's like learning how people actually live versus like balanced with aspirational qualities of where they want to go. And there's a lot that you need to know about that. So yeah, I would say collaboration is huge.
Cami, you work with your daughter, so there's probably a special kind of collaboration in your life, and your husband.
Yep, and very different, obviously. I mean, I think that I don't know you other two ladies, but I think I'm just truly an introvert. I used to think I was an extrovert. I don't know why, because there's nothing I do that really is like, I want to go to a party, or I love the fact that we're doing this from our homes in this format, and I'm not like sitting in a group watching like 90 people. I think it's going to be awesome, and I'm excited. We've had this dress rehearsal, so cool. But I think the collaboration for me, I have to do in little spurts. So I need to go get my information, and then I need a whole lot of time on my own to digest it, to work with it. So, there's my time with my daughter, but she actually doesn't like to collaborate with me. She likes to just do her own projects, and she just wants me to do my own projects. And she actually wants me to stay out of her projects completely. And if she's watching, that's true, honey. And with my husband, we're, you know, we kind of have our thing, but he's got information that I don't have. I've got information he doesn't have. So we just actually like, I need your information. And so it's very quick. It's probably more quick than he wants it. He'd probably like to go into a little more detail. And I just like, just give me the goddamn answer, please. So clients, that would be the time that I focus the most. And I'm really like, that's my flow time. That's when I'm like literally just like listening and collaborating. I could see them getting excited and I really like feed off of that. And I'm solving problems and I like to solve problems. I just like to be the person who solved their problem. And some of it is just I have confidence about the thing that I chose is the right thing. And once I have that confidence and I've explained why, they're just like, don't worry, we're done, we're good. I'm not going to overthink this. Because a lot of people that aren't good at design or can't design their own homes, they've been overthinking how they're going to do their homes pretty much their whole lives. So, you know, when I come in and I'm like, have all the answers, they're just like, thank you for making this stop. And of course I'm working with husbands and wives, couples, you know, and, you know, I have to kind of balance that, but, you know, making sure everybody gets heard. I'm not like doing any triangulation. I'm not aligning with the wife or the husband. Even though I'm clearly like, I like his opinion about this thing better, or he agreed with me and she's not, but I think I just need this time at home, this COVID time that we're all in. I know it's the wrong thing to say, but I absolutely am thriving in it. I just love it. I love being home. I love being able to work. I love having Zoom calls. I just, it's so me. I'm going to do business differently as soon as we are. I mean, I miss going to bars and I missed, you know, having some fun with friends, and I desperately miss my children and grandchildren. That's probably the thing that will, you know, make me tear up at night is that stuff. But this is like an introvert's dream. But I feel like I'm instead of like so much running around trying to like get to this client's house and then get to this client's house and talk to this person, I'm doing it in this more like organized way. So I think the collaboration is actually higher, and the time I get to work is like, it's increased, and it's just making me a much happier designer.
Do you think the end result for your projects will be different?
That is a really great question. I don't know. I think it might be too early to tell. I want to say yes, because I'm like a very positive, like, of course it's going to be better. It's going to all be the best thing ever, you know? Like I kind of have to believe that as a person, but I think so. Yeah, I don't know. Remains to be seen, but I love the question.
Is the time at home affecting the two of you in any particular way?
Me and my husband, or?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's not all about me. Fine, okay.
I was going to ask you about the marriage counseling that you probably have to do with couples as you design their home. So there's probably all sorts of marriage counseling questions that could come into this conversation, particularly in our time of being at home more. But specifically for Jen or Kat, is your work changing since you're at home more right now? Jen, you specifically, I guess, because you're in the same line of work that you have been for a while.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I've read everything online about like how will homes be different in the future, right? Like there's like all these articles about like how everything's going to change. So I've just been taking that in a lot. I don't know how much of that is going to be a reality. But yeah, I think the hard part is, I guess just the one-on-one communication, right? And especially when it comes around finishes and materiality, and having people actually like sense what their space is going to be like. I think that's been the hard struggle, I think, through all this. But I'm also an introvert, so I'm kind of thriving in this in this environment.
Kat, what's it like for you? Obviously a little different as you're
Very different.
Farm, so.
Well, from a design perspective, I'm still taking on a few projects or working on a few projects, but they're all with folks I've already worked with. Mm-hmm. So not being together hasn't been an issue. And even I would say it wasn't that much of an issue before, because we did a lot of work in, all over the country. And so a lot of stuff was done by conference calls. So it's nice because I think, like Cami said, you can get that time where you get all the input and you talk, and then you can go off and not be interrupted while you're doing your design. But from, I guess, more accurate for what I'm doing at this moment, we are so busy farming and learning everything we have to do on the farm that I'm having a very different, my last few months, I think, are very, very different than what most people's experiences are right now. In fact, I am thrilled that my daughter isn't at school because we are using her as an additional farmhand. So
we are going to get back to design questions, but I have to ask a farm related one for a second because I want to bring in some of the questions from our people who are joining us today. And here's the big one to lead with. Will you still have cyclocross races at your farm?
Oh man, that's so funny. I thought you were going to say you're going to still have concerts.
Oh, that's
because that was a big one we got, and we were so excited because we teamed up with oh shoot, on the spot, I'm going to do horrible. I forget Kate's last name. Livewire, help me.
Sokoloff.
Thank you. That part of my brain doesn't work. She was helping us team up with all of these great bands, and we're going to do sing-alongs with the Low Bar Chorale, but that remains to be seen. As far as the cyclocross, yes, we are still having a couple bike races. I do not know when or what it will look like because we're planting almost every acre of the farm, so it's going to have to be after everything is harvested. But we have been talking to a couple groups.
Thank you. I'm sure that the person is happy to have that answer. So from Letitia, she would like to know how you stay current in trends and technology in design. Cami, do you want to start us off with that? How do you stay current in trends and technology for interior?
Yeah, well, I would say that I don't. I mean, technology, yes. I mean, I use CAD and I've got all my programs. I'm very good on the computer, but I would say as far as trends, I literally hate the word trends. I hate having to follow trends. I don't want to care about trends. I just want to have good design. But that muse of mine feeds little things to me all the time. She's like, you should check out this blogger. You should, and I'm like, oh, I'll do. And I kind of think that she's trying to tell me at first because it's something she cares about. And then I'm like, oh, she's doing her thing where she wants me to know about something.
Right.
So I just have someone who's basically just my trend person, but she does it in this like secret, covert way. And then eventually, and it does take me a very long time, like maybe a year later, I'll be like, you're not going to believe this thing. She's like, I literally told you that like a year ago. I told you like exactly that. Like you just can't, and I eventually find my way to it. And I think it's amazing and can't believe how cool it is. So in my, just in normal life though, I don't really even read design magazines. I don't know other designers. I don't go to the Street of Dreams. I don't follow any HGTV shows. I don't
Even though one of your houses was on HGTV, one of your designs.
But to this day, I've like literally never watched those shows. Oh no, it actually didn't make it on the show. The show, it was terrible. It sucked and it didn't even air. So should just say that. We had great hair and a really wonderful time, but the show didn't make it. But yeah, I don't really pay attention to it. I have a source and that's how it gets to me. And hopefully she'll keep doing that forever. I'm the older one, so I'm probably in pretty good shape there.
Jen, do you follow trends? How do you stay current?
Yeah, I think it's tough as a designer. I'm really impressed, Cami, that you don't like just lean into all that stuff because there's so much noise that I think one of the skills, I guess, that you bring after a certain amount of time is just how to edit down to the most basic instead of looking at like what's that, looking at a beautiful picture and looking more at the surface style level. You're really trying to consider the experience of it all. What makes me feel good in that space, or what do I like about it? Just take away the style and just really start looking at the finishes or the light, or just the, is it a small space next to a large space? Just those kind of things that really evoke an experience in the space. But Trends are hard, and HGTV has made it so hard because people feel like things should just take a week, right? Like you design it in a day.
Yeah.
For some reason, you get a permit in a
cheap.
week, and then it should just all be done overnight. So I feel like people have false expectations that you constantly have to educate towards. So that's difficult.
You said you have been reading about how homes might change after COVID.
Yeah.
Can you give us any little bits from what you've been reading?
Yeah, it's been really fascinating. I mean, some people have said like people don't want to live in apartments anymore because they want a lot of space between their dwellings. Well, no shit. Like you don't necessarily choose that. And like the density crisis isn't necessarily like creating this vast space. So that seems extremely unlikely. All the way to, you know, will all our surfaces be antimicrobial? But it's, yeah, I feel like it's really fascinating because it's not like we haven't, as a global society, gone through things like this previously. And then you start thinking about like what has changed in terms of domestic design after those kind of things, right? But I think the things that are the most common elements or the common threads are just the idea of what is the most important spaces, important areas in your home, right? And the idea of like multifunctionality in terms of your spaces or your furniture, having the ability to have some kind of like natural light or air or just some kind of connectivity to nature. All these things I think people are just maybe prioritizing more moving forward. So perhaps doing a little bit more with less, having the knowledge of having spent a lot of time in that space.
Cami, natural light's always been an important part of your design, right?
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think what Jennifer was saying is so true about just, I mean, I haven't paid any attention, obviously, to the same material that she's been reading, but just as Snow was saying in the intro, I am getting more calls, more emails from potential clients. Some of them are moving from California. Some of them are, I would say the majority are just at home and they're like, this isn't working. Like none of what's going on here is working. I don't have the amount of space that I need. We need to have a more compartmentalized home. There needs to be zones in our home. Of course, because there's homeschooling kids. There's a lot of, you know, your home is your gym. It's your, you know, it's your restaurant, it's your school, it's all these things. And hopefully that's short-lived. But I think one of the kind of commonalities is that when you're really busy and you're just going at, you know, like gangbusters, you kind of can forgive that your home's not meeting your needs. And so now when you're paying attention to all these things and you realize that, no, it's really not, it's not comfortable. It doesn't have enough light. It's the flow, you know, isn't right. You know, there's just, you know, the whole gamut of all the things. I mean, not connected to nature, you know, so people are looking around and seeing, you know, what needs to be fixed. And someone who just doesn't have that skill, you know, just like we don't have other certain skills as designers, they don't have that skill that we have of seeing what a solution to that would be. And so thankfully people are reaching out instead of making the assumption it's like, oh, we need to move, or, you know, this is going to cost like $50,000, or, you know, because there's some really simple solutions. And I think that one of the reasons that I've been successful is I love to find an inexpensive solution to things. I love to find an easy solution to things. So when someone's got this assumption that this is going to be really difficult and we have to move this wall, I'm like, what if we just make it a half wall? You know, if there's other things you can do, and I absolutely, it's just, that's my DNA, is to come up with a, you know, obviously quality way, it meets all your criteria, but we didn't have to do more, spend more, and you know, put more effort in than is really necessary. So I love finding those spaces to minimize the impact of finance, time, everything. So, but yeah, I mean, yes, to answer your question, natural light, yes, yes, and yes. Especially where we live.
Exactly. And you were talking about our homes now being our restaurants and our gyms and everything. And this ties into a question that Sharon has. She is curious if you have studio space at home or at a different location. Sort of, where's your place of working? Kat?
Oh, well, currently my space is at home. Usually I've always had a separate spot. But one of the things that I really like about having a space at home is that for me, when I am going to sit down and go, head down, it's usually in the middle of the night or it's super early in the morning. I have these habits I go through when I'm going to actually just sit and design, and they always involve no one being around. No chance the phone's going to ring, no chance somebody's, going to call with a crisis. And I even have this whole, have to clean everything first before I even start a big project. So there's nothing that's going to get in the way of being able to just, go heads down. I was thinking when we were talking about the natural light, I think that's probably the single biggest thing that I look for in a space that I'm going to be creative. Is that ability to have the right light, come in. In fact, in all of my design firms that I've had, anybody that's been there will tell you they all looked exactly the same, because there was usually natural light or skylight. There was always blank walls. I have no color and no music when I work. And I know I'm probably the only designer in Portland that doesn't work with music, but I found that if you're in a space with a lot of color or a lot of music, there's no way for me that it doesn't influence me, right? If I'm sitting there rocking out to somebody, that mood or that tone is going to come through in the design. So instead, I really kind of do want a clear palette so that I can be focusing on all of the information that I've gotten from the client, or whatever the problem is that we're trying to solve. So I know we were talking earlier about, process. So I go even a step further, where after meeting with the client or with their whole team and getting input, we go through an exercise where we kind of come up with 3 adjectives. And this is really kind of my starting point of any project, even my own. And I just think this is such an easy way to help keep yourself focused, because it's so easy when you start showing comps to clients for them to be like, "Ooh, I really, again, like I like that color blue," or "I like this," and to really keep the project on track. What are, those 3 adjectives that most describe that feeling that you want to have for your company, for your publication, for your logo, for whatever it is? What are those 3 adjectives that it boils down to? So what I literally do is I put those 3 adjectives either on the wall or I tape them to the side of my laptop. And as I'm working, it's a great reminder. If I start like, "Oh, this is really cool," wait a minute. And it helps me pull back to make sure that I'm always centered and working towards what that end goal is. And I got to tell you, by the way, I totally stole this idea from, I don't know, there's a great designer, Robert Newman, who was a great mentor for a few years. He designed lots of publications that you guys would know. I mean, he started out in the Alt Weekly world. He went to Details Magazine or Vibe or Real Simple, Fortune. And so each time I went to visit him when he was at Details, he decided at that time he wanted the look to feel very much like some old Blue Note records that he found. So he literally lined his entire office with Blue Note records, so that whenever he was designing, it was like in that vein, those colors, those fonts, that vibe. And I just thought it was a fantastic nugget that I took from him that, I hope is helpful to pass on. So that's my excuse for no music.
There's a lot of pressure in 3 adjectives.
Well, there is. And I'll tell you, what I usually do is a very long process. What we usually do is we start out with about 100. Yeah. You get everybody involved. You get about 100 adjectives, and then it's the process of narrowing down. And so really it's almost not even which adjective you come over if you want something to be like smart or I'm not gonna be able to think of two now on the spot that are very similar, but listening to your clients argue or make their case why this one is more, is better than this one is a really great way to help them get out of them all that info. I often ask the same question multiple times, just slightly different, to get them to open up and to share, and so that you get that info you need to really really tackle the job. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes it's not remarkable how you kind of know the solution in the first 5 minutes. I mean, sometimes we just know, and I think as you get more confident or maybe older, you no longer think, oh, I have to agonize for weeks to get the solution. Sometimes the solution comes in 15 minutes, but so that it is a solution that's appropriate and not just what I think is the best solution. I think working with your clients and figuring out however you're going to draw that info out, whether it's through adjectives or some other way, is really, I find, such a powerful way for the solution to be the right fit for them.
What about you guys? What is your space where you work? Do you have a studio in your home? Obviously different right now, but Jen, what about you?
This is my dining room right there. You can see.
/studio/restaurant. Probably not /gym, I presume.
No, the gym is in the basement. But this is in between the kitchen and the family room over here. So, but it is in front of a window, which is really nice. And yeah, natural light. It could just be like a little box with a window. That's fine.
And do you listen to music? Is music important to you when you're designing, when you're planning?
Kat, I really respect your no music. I felt like such a nerd for saying that, but it's true. I really just kind of focus, and then I take walks, and I need brain breaks to just kind of galvanize my ideas, and then I'll listen to music or podcasts or whatever just to get my mind off of it. But for the most part, no, I'm just really I just break everything into kind of little blocks as I go along and just try to kind of focus on it.
Cami, is your studio, the beautiful table behind you?
This is just my dining room /bar, home lounge. But we actually have a warehouse showroom studio in Southeast Portland in the Fire Ironman Collective. It's this really cool old building where Rue's Brewing is. But I really don't, I go there to receive deliveries of furniture. That's where I keep all of my samples for like area rugs and things like that. So I really kind of don't use it for any kind of creative work. I like it and I like going there and I like being there, but that's kind of not what, it has a desk and I could work from there, but I just don't. I work from home. I'm a homebody. I have a real cute little dog that's laying over there and I just like to be with him. There's actually two of them. I don't think the other one's that cute. It's a long story. We have his and hers dogs. Just kidding, Joy. But I do not listen to music while I work. Not when I'm doing creative work. I might listen to like some Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus, Lizzo, basically music that teenagers listen to. But that is when I'm doing my spreadsheet, kind of like that brain. I get up like 4:30 in the morning and I just hit the ground running. I literally like wake up with like something I need to think about or I've been thinking about probably in my sleep or in the middle of the night, or at some point it just pops in and I'm like, I need to, but my brain is literally turned on creatively from the second. I don't need 30 seconds to even be like, I need to open my eyes. I just like go. And I can be in that focused zone for hours upon hours upon hours. Like my husband can walk right behind me, feed the dogs. And like 2 hours later, I'm like, did you feed the dogs? And he's like, you don't remember when I was feeding the dogs? And no, I don't. I had no idea that the doorbell rang. Like I really can lock in. And I love when I'm in that creative place. And then when I'm out of it, it's because I finished something. There was a little moment of closure, like I finished a concept or I finished a floor plan and I got it out, got it out the door, and then I can get up and do something. But literally I couldn't just like in the middle of that take a 10-minute break and go walk around. I'd be like, no, it'll be gone. Like, no, I have to plow through. And it's not painful. It's actually really enjoyable. I love that focus. So it kind of comes in spurts, but no, I don't listen to music. Start my day really early. I never do anything creative past like 6 o'clock. I'm not a night person. I totally wind down, usually with wine. Yeah, that's kind of my process. But I'm at home and I'm literally surrounded. This is my desk, which is in my dining room, which is a total interior design no-no. But I'm surrounded by 3 windows. Like I have, there's 6 windows around me. So it's just tons of natural light. I'm like in the trees. It's so pretty, and I love it.
Jen, are you a morning designer as well? Do you have a routine in the morning that you kind of jump into work?
4:30 in the morning, Cami?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love this idea of like, what is your hour of power when you do the most? I guess yours is 4:30 to 5:30. Mine is definitely, I'm a night owl. But yeah, I need a little bit, I need some caffeine to ramp into my creative vision, I think. I'm just not awake and then on it.
You're better after 6 than Cami, it sounds like.
I believe so, yes.
Kat, what about you? It sounds like you have certain habits or routines when it comes to kind of getting into your work. Is part of that doing it in the morning, or what does that look like for you?
I'm like Cami. I'm up super early, or if I'm super excited about it, I'm just up at like 2 in the morning and I start. But I've lost my night owl. I have a hard time staying awake, and I want the energy to dive in. So I'm no more late nights.
Okay, jumping into another question from the people who are joining us today. And if anyone else has questions they'd like to share, please do so. Color philosophy. Can you share your personal color philosophy? We gotta move this over, sorry. Can you share your personal color philosophy with us? How important is color in your work, and how do you incorporate it into your designs? Who would like to start on that? Cami, I know you start with white walls. So what is your color philosophy?
Yep, white walls. They can be different shades of white, but generally I feel like where we live, I don't want gray walls. That's kind of the go-to right now. If there were to be a current trend, it's light, soft gray, maybe some warm gray walls, but I'll do anything to talk a client out of doing a gray wall. And if they're really not open to it, they have total veto power. I'll work around it. It's not gonna, I'm not gonna do a less awesome job because of that. But I love light bouncing everywhere. I like the airy feeling that you get. I love that whatever you put against a white wall, it's just going to just like shine. I like just an empty white wall with just a plant. But I would say color palette wise, I like a pretty saturated color palette personally. I love indigo, like a lot of those really deep, rich blues. I like oranges, pinky reds. I think if I adjust my screen, you can see I have actually pink pendant lights in my dining room. I'm going through a little bit of a pink phase, and I think it's because I'm entering this very, I just did something weird with my hair. Oh God, it's gonna bug me. I'm trying to be a little more, I'm in a more playful period in my life, and I've got 3 little grandsons now, and I think that's really contributing to my playfulness. But I think I'm just caring less and less about stuff I used to care about, and that were just kind of dragging me down and making me think like, I can't like pink. That's gonna make me feel like I'm too young or I'm too old. And it's like, so I'm just like having a little bit more playful time in design personally. I can't always get clients on board with that, and that is totally fine. I'm here for them. But yeah, I like saturated colors. I don't like yellow at all. I just don't like the color yellow. I like the sun. I think it's very beautiful. But
but
and
yellow can stay with the sun.
yeah, but I don't, yeah. So there's some colors I'm averse to, but, and I'm not a very earthy palette person. Like I don't, the browns and the rusts and the hunter greens, those colors, I just don't gravitate towards them at all. Could be because I was like a child in the 70s and we did it and we did it and we just kept doing it. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, I mean, white walls would be the one thing that comes to mind. And I think I'd like to cure the world of anything without, you know, that's not a white wall.
Jen, with your maybe white, maybe slightly gray wall behind you.
I know. What is that? It is white. I think it's just in shadow.
Do you have a color philosophy?
I do appreciate a white wall. I am fascinated though about the psychology of color and how it affects your mood. I have to say I'm a huge fan of patterns and pattern design. I haven't had a lot of luck with clients getting on board with wallpaper and awesome graphic wallpaper, but we'll see where that goes. But yeah, it's such a personal preference, but at least it feels like color is something that kind of can shift with your, where you are in life, right? Like what you're feeling. And I feel like it's a kind of an easy thing also to adjust in your space. But yeah, I'd have to say I'm a fan of color, but perhaps more so texture. Like I'm always looking for things that you want to touch, right? And you want to reach out to and just surround yourself with.
When I was growing up, my parents owned a paint and wallpaper store. And so every room in our house had a different kind of wallpaper, every single one. They all sort of blended, but yes, we were loving the wallpaper. And I've wondered if the trend is going to come back. Probably not to the extent that it did in the Wilson household, but yeah.
Just accent walls, maybe.
Powder rooms. Powder rooms are good
Yes,
for wallpaper.
yes, powder rooms.
Do you have a color philosophy, Kat?
Mine goes back to type. I will be very hard pressed not to keep my type to black or white. I do not use a lot of color in type at all. But just like coming up with a font palette when I start with a project, I will come up with a color palette in the beginning to help shape the project.
Great. We need to talk a little bit about what it's like being a woman in this field. And Jen, we've got to start with you because you had a specific fellowship where you looked specifically at women in the construction trade. Is that right? Can you tell me a bit about your fellowship and what you studied?
Yeah, so I was, after having been part of our local AIA, which is the lobby with architects in the profession, I was able to get the Van Abra Bailey Fellowship. And that's a year-long fellowship that is given to people in, not necessarily architects, but landscape architects or urban planners, to just research different topics that they think will influence the community, the design community. And something that I was really interested in was the inequity within the profession of architecture. I think it's really interesting. I mean, even like the three of us, when you think about it, like historically speaking, with interior design, even though the bulk of interior designers are women, most of interior design firms are led by men, like larger interior design firms. And as a creative director, there's only like just a little bit over 10% of women that are creative directors in that environment. And for architects, even though we have parity coming out of school, so we have 50% men and women graduating with architecture degrees, we have approximately 20% of women being architects. So there's a lot of attrition and loss of talented people in the profession. So my thought was, you know, why is this happening? One, and what could be done at a local level to try to ebb that. And one of the things that through this research that I found was that there aren't a lot of opportunities for women in general, not just women in the architecture field, but to get hands-on exposure to construction. And since that's something that is really an important element with what we do, I started thinking about ways that we could partner up with different organizations at a local level to not only gain more construction experience for those that are in the architecture field, but then also help these organizations that need volunteers. So with that research, I was able to develop the Designers Build PDX. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. I had big plans to launch this summer, but with all this, there's not much partnership going on. But in the future, I'm hoping that it's just really a platform where different local organizations can partner up with women designers, and we can garner more construction experience, and they have the ability to get things done just on a community level.
I'd love to jump in about that too, because obviously I work with a lot of builders. I'm actually working with a female general contractor right now. And this isn't to bag on men and the way that they GC a job at all. And long ago when my mom, I said she was an architect, she actually got so fed up with the builders that she was working with, she ended up becoming a GC. This is like in 1977 when there were no women in the field. There's not very many now. And they were the subcontractors. I mean, many of them refused to work with her because she was a woman. But I think that the biggest thing for me is we just do things differently. I mean, men and women are not the same. And, working with this woman, Amanda, on this job right now, there's just so much about how she goes after a job. And it's not this old school, old hierarchy, this industry has been around forever, and this is just how things are done. And Cammie, you can't change how things are done. We don't do it like that. This is how the world works. You can't have two subcontractors show up on the same day. No one likes to be on top of each other. Well, it's like Amanda's just like bucking the mold on everything. She's just like, I don't, why? He's downstairs, she's over there, and so I like that it just brings a freshness and a newness to this field. And so it's not that, the men aren't doing things well, but it's like when you don't have both men and women equally doing something, you're just missing out on how the other half would do it. And we have, not to get all political, but if 50% of the women held high offices, our country would not be in the shit that it's in right now. Not the virus. I mean, men aren't responsible for that, I don't think. Who knows? There's conspiracy theories. I'm not blaming them. But it's like, you think that we're going to handle gun control the way it's being handled? Like, hell no, we're mothers. Like, we love human life. We care about it. We take care of it. And we're not going to do anything that could harm that. So it's just like, we're going to approach it differently. And not to say that all of us are, we're not all the same. Like, I'm not making that kind of generalization. But that's what I miss about having builders in construction, that half of them, just like, I don't get to work with women on that level. And so I don't get what they would bring to the job. And just this experience with this one builder, I'm just like, it's just so lovely that she doesn't think like this old school, very male, industry. I want more.
Kat, I want your reflections on this. Probably leaving gun control out of it, because we will take a whole new path in our conversation. But what about being a woman working in design right now, talking about women in construction? What are your reflections on what you just heard?
So, on what I heard or what I feel?
Either.
Okay. Because, when Snow asked to do this, I thought, well, this is kind of weird. Why is it, a panel on women, right? And I never really I never really thought it's any different for me than for anybody else. And I can, of course, like anyone, have had experiences that it, you know, was because I was female, fine. But I don't really think about it on a normal basis. I do think that the more we can have diversity of every kind on a project, the stronger it is. And I think that one of the things like that would be nice to see more of in Portland is people recognizing that hiring other people that think just like you and work just like you is not really going to enhance your project. It's bringing in people that have different points of view that are going to enhance your project. And that's why working with a team where everyone's different, I think, is what's so strong. I think when, you know, we were talking about trends, I think the word trend is horrible because a trend means you're following, you're not leading. And that's different than keeping up on what technology is out there and knowing, you know, what is available. But I really, I just really think you want as many people. You know what's really interesting is, so when I came out to Sauvie Island from Portland, it's like I moved 100 miles away, right? I mean, just because, you know, being a mom and talking to other moms and seeing how other moms were treating their kids compared to the moms in the neighborhood where I was in Portland, it was like, wow, this is fantastic, just because it was different. Yeah. So, you know, I don't know. I have a hard time. I always kind of have a hard time when people start talking about how it's harder for women, because some things are easier. You know, we were talking about this, I think, on one of our calls. There was this article. I was meeting. Let me see if I can narrow this. I was talking to this woman on a board for a company that I was working for, and she was talking about how it's, in general, many women have a much easier time pivoting and going a different direction or trying a different career than most men. How awesome is that? You know? So I just don't like to focus on it. Everybody's going to be hit with something that doesn't go well. But if you spend a lot of time thinking about it, you know, then you're going to make it an obstacle. So anyway.
We're getting near the end of our time, I'm afraid. But what I would like to hear from all of you, maybe as a wrap up, is any advice that you have for a young designer or someone who wants to break into the field that you are so professional in. Who would like to start with sort of some closing comments, advice for some of the younger and aspiring people who are joining us today?
Here, let me start and I'll get it out of the way. Shadow as many people as you can. You know, it's a luxury to be an intern. I remember when a lot of my fellow students at my school were being interns, and I couldn't, because I couldn't afford to go and do an unpaid internship. I try whatever way you can. There are classes at PSU and at PNCA where literally every night they go to a different design firm. Go and be a sponge. Finding a place that you go and you hate it, that's just as valuable as going to a design firm and loving it. It took me, I started, you know, design at a certain firm, and it took me, I was at a place where we did a little of everything, which was ideal because it didn't take me very long to realize every time a publication project came up, I got to work a little earlier. I stayed a little later. I got, you know, really excited. You have such an opportunity when you're starting out that you can go and shadow, that you can just go and have an informational interview, that you can go and say, look, can I just come and deliver coffee and hang out? It's amazing how many, like a design firm, from design firm to design firm, can be totally different. So use the fact that you can go and look behind the curtain and do it often. I think one of the problems that young folks make, I did it too, is you often just start taking on freelance work and working for yourself. Well, you can do that your whole life, but you can't, like, what a gift to go and be around people. And so take advantage of that.
Thank you. Jen, what about you?
I think what I would suggest would be I mean, I think the shadowing thing is extremely valuable. Another thing might be just kind of, especially early on, although your whole life, following whatever makes you curious, right? Because I think it's just an ongoing path, right? You never know where one thing is going to lead. So you always have to be kind of open-minded to what is resonating with you, find out everything that you can. And especially now, there's so many online courses and classes and webinars. It's pretty amazing. You can find, different people that are doing something that really compels you and figure out, well, how did they get where they are? Because there's so many careers now that there's not really a great kind of a summary of how do you do what this person is doing. You have to kind of find all these paths to get there. So
Cami?
I would say don't give up. I think that it's so easy to have self-doubt and to have a lack of confidence, and you put yourself out there and not everyone said yes and not everyone thought you were wonderful and magical things didn't happen. And the thing is, it actually just takes a long time to build a career. And I love what Kat said, because you got to get those opportunities out there. And some of them might just completely suck, but they're informative too. And there might be someone there that actually remembers you, for your great attitude, your can-do spirit, all that kind of stuff. And that opportunity comes from that person later from a totally unrelated job that you hated, So, I mean, I think don't give up too soon, and don't assume that because things are not happening as quickly as you want, that you are not right for a creative career or a design career or any career. It's like, there is room for all of us. There truly is. And I didn't know that when I was 30. I thought, I'm either going to get out there and I'm going to fail and I'm going to have to do something totally different. Or, I just thought it was that black and white. But, you look from hindsight and you realize, like, oh no, there's actually just room for all of us. There's, I think, 979 interior designers listed on House for Portland, Oregon. And when I first went on there, I'm like, well, I'm never going to get up. I mean, how am I going to rise to the top? You pay to rise to the top. That's one. Just pay $250 a month and they'll help you out there. But there's room for all of us. There really is. We all have different creatives. And so just for God's sakes, don't stop, don't give up, and create in any way you can. And I couldn't agree, Kat, with you more in that just do freelance work. Don't just try it on your own in a vacuum, because you don't have the skills, the experience, or the connections yet. Those are things you have to go get. And that happens from working with people who know more than you do, and you might be their boss someday. And there's certainly people that I have taught in classes that have just gone on to like insanely cool shit. And I'm just like, wow. And they stayed with it. They probably paid some serious dues, and you will have to too, and we all have. I guarantee I've done so much shit I didn't like. And, just go forth and stay with it. Really and truly stay with it. Have patience.
I think this conversation could have been called, or the next one should be called, 4 Women Doing Insanely Curious Shit. Guys, it has been so awesome having time with you. I feel inspired to look at the world in a slightly different way, to not be afraid to sort of take a turn in life as it approaches us, and to show up at a farm and buy some berries.
Yeah.
I'm going to hand it back to Snow, who I think is going to pop back in and do some final comments for us.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you guys. I think she's coming back. We have her beautiful image. There she is.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry for the delay. I just want to say thank you. I think one of my talents is my ability to surround myself with amazing people. And I hope that this panel was as valuable for all of the participants out there as it was for me. So I don't have a lot of words to say. I'm just thankful that I have these amazing women to say all the words that I wish I could say.
Thank you, Snow.
Thank you.
yes, thank you all.
All righty, you guys, that concludes our broadcast this evening. Thank you very much for joining us for Paint the Ceiling Pink, a webinar focused on women in design. We hope to see you next time. And if you wouldn't mind following Snow Bee Designs, we wouldn't mind it. And maybe check out Topaz Farm and Telford Brown Studio and maybe Cami Gray Interior Design. I'm just saying. All right, you guys, we've really appreciated your evening and spending your time with us. Stay safe, Portland. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.